In 2026, security assurance is no longer one in audits, it's one in operations. The board expects certified and attested customers, expect trust, regulations accept provable, and yet ISMS and SOX 2 programs still fail, not because of the framework is wrong, but because no one owns the operation reality. Tension leaders feel right now is brutal. Policies look strong, controls look mapped, tools look purchased. But the moment a system change happens, a vendor rotates staff, an incident hits, or an audit asks for evidence, the truth appears ownership is missing. And when ownership is missing, evidence becomes a theater. Every IT and security leader knows the moment the audit window opens and suddenly teams scramble for screenshot, stale spreadsheets, and we fix it next quarter. The scramble isn't documentation issue, it's an operating models issue. This matter now is because 2026 assurance expectations are continuous audits, buyers due diligence, cyber insurance, third party risk, and board grievance. Frameworks like NIST CSF 2.0 explicitly evaluate governance and accountability through the new govern function. If you are still transactional or recent transitioned ISO and ISC 27001 and 2022 expectations have become the baseline post deadline, meaning operations, monitoring, measuring, and improvement must be real, not performance. Our guest today, Krishna, brings the rare combination that makes the topic real: multi location IT operation, cybersecurity leader, lean execution, ISO IEC 27001, audit discipline. That's where the truth lives. In the change window, ticket queues, identity life cycles, vendor ops, and evidence that must exist without drama. Let's welcome Krishna to our podcast session and dive into the topic. Sir, good evening. Welcome to our podcast, sir. How are you today?
I'm doing good, Mr. Prem. How are you doing?
Good, sir. Sir, a small intro about yourself to the podcast audience, sir.
Yes. Hi, I'm Krishna. I'm a senior IT operations and cybersecurity leader with more than 25 years of experience. Over the past 25 years, I have seen cybersecurity mature from an IT support function to now a core function of any business. Now, security cannot be just treated as one small department, but if it is not there, your business will not run. Your business resilience is linked to security. And GRC governance, risk, and compliance is a must. You cannot take it lightly and just say, I will do IT operations and security, but no governance. No, that will never happen.
Let's dive into the topic and have our first pointer coming. Why is ISMS and SOC 2 programs fail even after doing everything right?
Yeah, that's an interesting question actually. So if you see ISMS and SOC 2 certifications, many companies go for it because their sales demand it, investors ask for certification, and regulations want certification. So for the very first time, organizations are very serious about certifications. They put in all their efforts. They have everything in place, processes in place. They do quarterly audits. They do everything. Even for vendors, they have questionnaires in place. But once the certification comes, then they think that okay, they have achieved the flag post or something. But that is not it. It is actually. But if you see, that is just a starting point for an organization. An organization will never be a fully mature organization. It will take time. You can never say I'm a complete mature organization. There will always be a scope for improvement, and that is what ISO really emphasizes actually, continuous improvement. And that is what I like about new ISO 27001 2022 standard, where there is a lot of emphasis on continuous improvement. In the earlier days, when we got certified for BS 799 and the old ISO 27001, not much of emphasis was there. It was more on documentation. They were insisting on, like, whether you have a 40-page security policy, access control policy, uh, so whether you're maintaining spreadsheets, that is what they were emphasizing on actually. Now if you see, there's a lot of emphasis is on security awareness, phishing, DLP, threat intelligence, and these things are a continuous thing. You can never say, okay, I did security awareness training for my team members, and now I can, pat on my back, say that everything is fine. No, there are situations I know, people who have undergone security awareness, they fail phishing simulation tests regularly, and companies should take those things seriously. It is very good thing to have this kind of dashboard saying that yes, 100% people have completed the security awareness, but how many people fail phishing simulation? That is also a very important question. Now, as you rightly said, when you treat compliance as something like an audit thing or a static thing, you will always fail, because governance is a continuous function. It never stops, and that is where uh, these issues happen. Technology environments, they are very dynamic. Code changes daily, infrastructure changes. Today you might have 100 servers, tomorrow you might have 150 servers. It changes dynamically. Then configurations also evolve continuously. You'll have multiple changes done by multiple people. We do not know how many changes were approved, how many were not approved, whether proper risk assessment was done. We do not know. So this is the reality. Then the mismatch really happens when you start to treat these uh, cyber security or this governance like quarterly photographs. Okay, let's do quarterly updates, and then suddenly when an audit happens, they see that things are missing, and that is where uh, people fail actually. They start to think that, okay, let the audit come, let's see. And many organizations also do the same mistake. They do not do a half yearly audit. That is what I believe should be the best, best practice. They do a 1 year audit, and then in 1 year a lot of things change actually.
You're absolutely true, sir, because those are days are gone where you had quarterly audits, weekly, yeah, half yearly, and so now it is a continuous audit that we are talking about, and that audit spans from day one, and the automation that kicks in to check what are that policies that are available, how is that we are looking at. Now, coming to our second one, strategy plus growth reality check. If the CEO asked who owns the controls, outcomes end to end, and how many teams would point at each other?
Yeah, that's a good question. When you're in the boardroom, the CEO asks this question. Obviously, you'll have the security team, you'll have the IT team, you'll have the governance team pointing fingers to each other. Security team will say, yes, I built the policies. IT team will say, I have implemented everything. Operations team will say, I have developed the code, I have implemented the code, I have run everything. But still, nobody will take up the responsibility. Everybody will have their own silos. They will have their own small responsibilities, but nobody will take an overall responsibility. The developers should not have this capability or mentality that, okay, I have developed the code, now it's gone into production, now it's no longer my headache. But the what should be the uh, thing on their mind is, like, even if there is an issue, they should sit and fix the problem. They cannot say, no, my job is over, let the deployment team do the job. And that is where the problem happens. You have access reviews which will be completed, but privilege creep will be increasing. And you see that you do your access privilege reviews every quarter, but you will forget to check these small accounts which are created just for the sake of a temporary thing. Some customer will ask for some temporary account, some FTP account that will be created. Okay, so then they will never forget to delete. Second, vulnerability tickets will be closed, but SLA breaches will be happening. Then you run vulnerability scans. uh, the same kind of threats will be coming again and again. Developer says, I have fixed the problem, it will never occur again, but the same vulnerability appears every time, and that is not a good sign actually.
From a technology lens that you have to look at it, where does the breakdown start? Tool gaps, weak integration, or missing operation accountability for control execution? Where does it break, sir?
So if you see, the entire thing does not sit into one single topic. So you have tools, you have can you please repeat it again? Yeah.
What we are saying is, where
Yeah.
does it break down starts? Tool gaps, weak integration, or missing operational accountability for control execution?
I would say it's a combination of everything actually. So you have tools in place, but there are no integrations. Let's give an example. You have a vulnerability scanner, you run the scan, but you do not uh, map it to the your Jira for bug tracking. So that vulnerability will be there, but it will never be mapped. There will not be a compliance tag assigned to it, and then you suddenly realize after some time that okay, this vulnerability is there, but nobody is taking action on that, and this is what is the problem actually. So you will have mix and match of tools which are never integrated, and organizations also do the same. Like, for example, if there is a subscription for a tool, and these tools are also priced based on the features. So you will have a basic feature version which will offer scanning, but there will be an advanced version which will offer integration with bug tracking like GitLab, GitHub kind of thing. So if you go to the manager, he will say, no, I don't think I need this feature. Let me save some money. And just to save some X number of dollars, they forego this feature, and then after 3 months or 6 months, they realize this is what is making their systems go bad.
Yeah. So I get your point. Where we are saying is ownership beats documentation. I think that's what we. SOC 2 is an examination control relevant to trust and services criteria. So that's what you are trying to say. I think frameworks don't fail, ownership fails is what you are saying. Now, coming to the next point, what
Yes.
does operational ownership actually mean in one clear definition?
Yes, good. That's a good question. So when people say operational ownership, it very often sounds abstract, but it's actually very simple. Let's think that you are building a house. You have an architect. His job is to do the design. So it's equivalent to your strategy. Then you have the contractor. The contractor will do the implementation. So he's like the project delivery. So once he finishes the house, he will hand over the keys to the owner, and then the everything is left to the owner. The owner will have to pay the bills, fix the plumbing, and when there is a problem with the electrician, he'll have to call the electrician. He has to maintain the house. So in this context, if you see, the house owner can be called the operational ownership. So he has to do it the entire end to end. He cannot say, I the house is mine, but the responsibility does not belong to me. If you see here in GRC, the uh, how it is mapped to control owners, they are responsible for control execution. Risk owners, they are responsible for risk treatment. And if this is one of the most important thing in cybersecurity or in frameworks, the risk owners, if they are not identified properly, your risk will go into, they do not, they are not implemented properly at all. So identification of the risk owners is very important. And secondly, the risk owners should be made aware of the seriousness why they need to do it actually. Because let's say there is a sales tool, and the risk owner is assigned to the VP of sales. Now the VP of sales is, okay, I am busy, my job is to bring orders, but my job is not to take care of, the security inside my team, for example. And there are situations where the team members do not know how to handle a mail which has come suspiciously, whether laptops are encrypted, whether data is going without any controls, whether DLPs are in place. He will not bother about it. He'll say, okay, my job is to bring business. But if this is treated as a risk, and the risk owner is assigned for this job, he has to take care of it actually. He cannot say, I will let the IT team know to decide what needs to be done. No. IT team is only can implement what you say, but they cannot say what is the best for your team, right? So the ownership should be there, the responsibility, and that is what is lacking actually. Many of them, they try to just put the ownership or blame to IT, saying that anyway IT team is there, let them do what they want. And system owners, they are responsible for uptime and compliance. Process owners are responsible for SOP adherence. So this is how we map operational ownership in GRC.
Very, very clearly given, sir. Now, coming to the next point, what must be the control owner own in systems, workflows, access automation, logs, dashboards to make the control provable daily?
Good. Operational ownership means that he owns the entire telemetry. To make a control provable at any given point of time, the owner must own the workflow, access, automation, and logs. So, first, he has to own the workflow. That means the control is embedded in an enforced process, typically inside an ITSM or IAM platform, not happening over email or chat. Approvals, changes, and reviews should follow a structured path. Initially, organizations, when they go for certification, they follow everything. Then they will say, I have this important change to be implemented. They will ping the person to approve it. And the fellow will say, okay, approved. And that they will copy it, send it as email, and ask the other person to implement. But that is not what it is. So the controls has to be embedded into the tool. Second, they must own access and configuration. They should know what kind of MFA is enforced, what kind of logging is there, what kind of segregation rules are there, and any changes are done. He has to be aware of it. He cannot say some changes are done and I'm not aware of it. So, if the controls are changed in a haphazard manner, these control drifts do happen. Third, they should also own the automation layer, triggers, alerts, SLA thresholds. All these things should be system enforced. So you cannot have a manual triggering of alerts and SLAs. So everything should come from the system. If reminders are manual, then discipline weakens over a period of time. And this is what is very important. And last but not the least, they must own the logs. Now, when the logs are enabled, it should be ensured that they are recorded. It is forwarded to a SIM. Dashboards are there. Dashboards are reviewed, and necessary action is also taken. Now, you cannot simply say, okay, those dashboards are there, everything is fine, hunky dory. Nothing will happen like that. So you should have uh, the ownership in the logging also. When you own the dashboard, it also means that you need to take the necessary action when there is any abnormal activity. And we should also make sure these data, whatever you have, is uh, cannot be tamper proof. Like if you have data in a SIEM or any system, and the data can be tampered, then it will not solve the problem. Those data should be protected, and the proper access rights should be there.
Valid points, because logs are one things that help us to look at the scenario where what has gone wrong, what logs have been written, whether those are application logs, they are system logs or security logs, is what we need to look at when we look at having the logs maintained. And how frequent this errors are happening, only the logs will tell you, is what I understand, right? So now when we say ownership is as one accountable person who ensures the control is designed, adopted, and measured with evidence and improved continuously over the period. So that's what we want to look at. Now, what's accountability model in RACI or DRI that prevents audit threat and incident chaos?
Well, it sounds like a formal title, DRI, but it's actually a project management framework which was popularized by Apple. So their idea was when things go sideways, it's a system breach or vulnerability or a data breach, there is one specific person holding the hot potato. And if you've been following politics, this word hot potato was there in the news also. So we need to move to the DRI model. DRI is nothing but directly responsible individual. In 2026, the team is no longer an acceptable answer for accountability. And this also aligns very well with the NIST Cybersecurity Framework 2.0 govern function. So that is a very good thing which I liked it about the security framework of NIST, where they have put a lot of emphasis on the govern model. In version 1.0, it was just hidden somewhere in one of the controls. But now they have explicitly made govern as the first part of your cybersecurity model, and this prevents audit theater. So what it means is like before an audit, just say let's say you have an audit say in 2 days, so you start cleaning up your files, and that is not what is expected. So, in case of a DRI, an audit is just another day where you are doing everything. So, it should not be left to an incident or left to an event like an audit to start cleaning up your stuff. Now, when I compare this to the RACI model, RACI model was very good. It's still relevant in ISO 27001, but I feel it's useful for big companies where there are multi-departmental corporate projects. You have responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed, and it can be slow due to multiple layers of consultation. Whereas in DRI model, it focuses on a single point of responsibility. It's designed for high speed execution and clarity, and it is best for agile security teams, which how they are now, and emergency incident response. Let's take an example of a CISO. Now, when there's a security incident, CISO is the one person who will have to collect all the information, and he will have to present this information to either to the board or to the uh, relevant people. Now he cannot chase 10 different people, so right, so there has to be one person, so that one person we call is directly responsible individual.
Got it, sir. So what this is,
And also, one more
yeah.
thing, the DRI need not do the job. For example, let's say there's a DRI for patching. Now, let's say there are 5,000 servers in the company. Now, it is not the job of the DRI to go and patch. His job is to get the things done. So he has to chase the engineers or chase the patchman and ensure that the dashboards are green. So people misunderstand that when the person is a DRI, he has to do everything. It's like you can say it's like a smart work. They should know how to delegate the job, get things done, and of course, at the end of the day, take complete ownership or accountability. Now they cannot say, I have assigned this job to the engineers, they forgot to do it, or they were busy with something, they had another task to take care of. They cannot tell all those stories. When you are a DRI, you have to take complete ownership for that particular activity.
Sorry, you got it. So what we are saying is the control is the major pointer that has to be looked at any scenario is what we are saying. And now even if you are responsible for everything, there needs to be one person who's accountable, right? If that is not there, there is
Yes.
everyone becomes responsible, no one will become accountable. So
Yes.
that's the task that we should look at, where we should not have made accountable. So everybody should be not having the responsibility, but one should be having a accountability is what we are saying. Where does the
And
last
another
mile
important,
break? So yeah.
actually, another important thing. So when the person is a DRI, the another important thing is he should be given control. Like you cannot tie his hands down and say you are the DRI. He should be empowered to take decisions at the right time. Actually, now you cannot say you are the DRI for an incident, but if something happens, you will have to again consult people. You will have, that will never happen, right? So either you give full ownership, give control to that person, or don't blame him when something happens.
One way of saying is, when you are accountable, you are responsible also. So that's the first point that we
Yes.
want to say. And the second point is also is that when you are given responsibility, you should be given the freedom to execute it also. See, that's the point that we are looking at. So where does the last mile break, sir? Whether it is controls or evidences?
So if you say, I would like to frame this in a different way. Controls or claims, evidence is currency. Now, most of the teams, what they do, they say they believe that they're running the controls, but when the breakdown happens, it happens not because of execution, because it happens at the provability. Now, let's say you are having logs of as an important item, and if the log does not correlate to what really happened with the incident, you just take a screenshot. Now screenshots, okay, we will cover it later. That is one of the weakest things actually. So if people think that, okay, I'll take a screenshot and take it as evidence, that can never happen, right? Nowadays you can ask even any chat gpt or anything to create a screenshot, that can happen. So unless you can prove that whatever you have, it cannot be treated as evidence. And unless you have evidence which is tamper proof and it can be traced back, then only you will win actually. And that is where I would emphasize evidence is the key. Even though you can say I have all these controls in place, but unless you prove it, you cannot uh, say that, okay, everything is fine. You can say my website is safe unless you prove through your vulnerability test done by a third party. See whether everything is fine. Vulnerabilities are within the limit, then only you can say. Otherwise you cannot say, okay, my website is safe. It's very easy to say. It's very easy to say that, everything is fine. The evidence is most important here actually.
Got it, sir. So what we are saying is, one way is responsibility, the other way is giving control and ownership for it, and the third is having the evidence ready for the audit to run, or when the auditor is asking, rather than running for last minute work, is what you are saying. Which evidence types are mostly fragile? Screenshots, spreadsheet trackers, ad hoc reports, or unlinked ticketing systems? Which one do you think, sir?
Yeah, okay, good. So, from a technology point, as I said, the most fragile evidence types are the ones that rely on manual handling of data. So, screenshots are the weakest link, and they capture a moment in time, not the life cycle of a control. Let's say you capture a screenshot of you deleting a record, but that does not capture the life cycle. It does not prove completeness. It does not prove consistency. Similarly, spreadsheets are also very risky because they introduce manual edits, no proper version control, a lot of changes. You will not know what changes happened between one version to another version. You will just see there are 12 different versions, but you never know what changes have happened. And very unclear data lineage, and over a period of time they really diverge from source systems. And because you use spreadsheets, you have to rely on external data, and if you do not copy the data properly or whatever it is, those data will never be in sync with what is actually there actually. Let's say you would have copied some data from a tool into an spreadsheet, and then after say 1 month or so, the data in the source system would have changed, whereas in the Excel sheet it still shows the old data. So that kind of inconsistencies will be seen a lot in spreadsheets. Then if you take about talk about ad hoc exports, they're slightly better because they're directly from the tool. But if you see, without audit trials, without context, and without proof of completeness, they still do not demonstrate operational consistency. And unlinked ticketing systems are also fragile. You have an ITSM, you have IAM, and logging. If these are not integrated, evidence also becomes a reconstruction exercise, and you will struggle when there's an audit and you'll have to prove something. Let's say you have to prove that there was a proper change request, proper approval, then there was a trail of what really happened. If you do not you're not able to prove that, then it's very difficult actually. And that is why I say controls are claims and system generated evidence is proof. And the
More.
strong is automated,
Yeah.
timestamped, integrated, and retrievable on demand.
Okay. So what we are saying is whatever evidence that you are having be real time. One is real time looking at, and if if that is old data, you'll be having the timestamps that it is captured, how it can be retrieved, and how it is stored. Those are the important points that you need to look at when we look at having these kind of data. Now, what is the hidden cost of a weak evidence? Slower sales cycles, failed renewals, higher cybersecurity insurance friction, or trust loss? What is that you think about this?
It's everything actually. So if I see weak evidence is a trust tax actually. So in 2026, our biggest hurdle is to proving to our customers that we are not a supply chain risk. When you have a certification in place like a SOC 2 or ISMS, you tell the customer you are genuine. And when the evidence is messy, the sales cycle grinds to a halt. And that is where legal and risk teams at Fortune companies will flag you as very high risk. Let's take one example. Let's say an auditor will ask for a proof of a code review which happened 6 months back. Now, if you do not have proper controls in place, you'll have to ask your developer who is developing an important code to leave everything, go to the system, whether it's GitHub or whatever tool is in place, dig through the Jira tickets, see what is linked, where is the source code, and then recreate the narrative. So you are not only paying for the audit, but you're also paying very high premium for your most expensive engineers to act as digital archaeologists, and this is not something which is good. Secondly, the sales cycle will also be delayed. Let's say you have your security questionnaires, and nowadays when you are dealing with new customers, you also have to answer various security questionnaires. So every time those sales engineers will have to ask you, you'll have to stop your work, they'll have to stop their work. So a lot of time is wasted on these things, hence four and four. They will have one doubt, you will have some more doubt. So there's a lot of time is lost in that activity. So if you do not have proper processes in place, you will spend a lot of time in just to answer these questionnaires. And last but not the least, the high cyber insurance friction. Now people will say, okay, I want to go for cyber insurance. I am safe from every attack. But no, nowadays even cyber insurance companies are also very uh, clever. If they see that you do not have MFA in place, they see you do not have DLPs in place, they can refuse insurance. Unless first you should exhibit those controls, that you should show that these controls are in place. Then only you can go for insurance. You cannot say I have opened all my doors, all my windows are open, no controls are there, but give me insurance. That will never happen.
What you are saying is the insurance also is in such a way that they look at what is the current state and what is that it
Yes,
is getting insured. So based on that security risk that we are carrying, and the insurer always looks at what is the evidence that is there for them to be protected. Not paying for those fines is what I think is another
yes,
point when you transfer the risk to the insurance company,
yeah.
right?
And if,
So
if you do not have enough controls in place, obviously, instead of X amount of as insurance, you'll have to pay double.
double, yeah, true, true. Now, what we see is teams do the controls, but don't capture the proof in a tamper-resistant, repeatable way. So, push evidence by design is what we are saying. And ITSM, you started with saying that ITSM integration, auto logging, immutable trails, because you cannot have something can be altered. Also, is what you told in some time back.
Yes,
So if you are having things like that, that brings down the trust of the uh, organization. It hits the brand value of it. And so when controls claim evidence is the currency, so uh, that's where we can protect ourselves, is what we are saying. Coming to the next point that I want to understand, post transition, what changes have happened from ISO 27020 to 2022 post transition? What operational changes have happened in 2026?
yeah. This ISO transition, like from 27001 2013 to 22, which closed in October 25. Now auditors are not asking did you transition. Now
Hmm.
the question they are asking is did you mature. Most of the organizations, they would have transitioned from 2013 to 22. They would have updated the annex A mappings. New controls are in place for DLP, threat intelligence and other things. Now KPIs have been introduced. In the olden days there was no talk about KPIs. Now you have to show your KPIs. Then there is to be continuous improvement. Now continuous improvement has to be measured, and you cannot show old records and say that I am showing continuous improvement. There has to be an evidence which can be measured. And one example I can say is threat intelligence. Now, the auditors will ask for more evidence. When you Threat intelligence is one of the controls in ISO 27001, and there they will say how this threat intelligence, how are you doing threat intelligence, how are you taking action, and upon that particular action, what are you doing? Now, let me give you an example. In my previous company, when we were implementing ISO 27001, threat intelligence was new for us. So we started doing this. I used to visit a lot of websites, check what vulnerabilities are there, and see what needs to be done. And I realized that for one of the tools we are using, that is a ticketing tool, there is a vulnerability. Now, we had to capture it in our GRC tool. Then we have to do risk assessment for that, set up a separate sandbox, implement the version what we're talking about, make sure the vulnerabilities are not there. Then, before putting into production, put a change request in the ITSM tool, link it to the risk what we have found out from threat intelligence, to do a proper risk assessment, then have proper backup plans in place, have proper uh, what you need to do, what will happen, what is the rollback plans, document everything, implement that, then finish the loop. So you cannot say there's a threat, I just acted upon it. So they will say, even if you say you need to upgrade the firewall version or make changes to firewall features, you cannot say I just changed this in the firewall, my threat was gone. Next evidence, auditors will ask, how did you make the change? Who approved the change? That's very important. And secondly, people have this misconception that everything should be fine in internal audits. So they try to portray that zero non-conformances. zero observations is the best thing for internal audits. But what I see is that is a big red flag when auditors come for the external audit. If you say, I do not have any vulnerabilities, I do not have anything, everything is perfect, that means something is fishy.
Point to be noted is that you cannot be 100% compliant. So that's the first
Yes.
point that you should be looking at. Now, if you are saying the controls are 100%, they are missing actually what exactly is pointers that are needed, because every day there is a change that is happening to the way our systems are behaving, the way the attackers are looking at the systems, how they want to penetrate, what is the ports that are available for them to log in and check. Is there a port scanner which they have put across, and if they see one port that they can gain access to, they will also, most of the time the audit people will look for uh, pointers like access control, where people have left the organization but their accounts are not still active and they are not got deactivated. So those are some things that will catch the eye when you say 100% compliant, or we are adhering to that compliance 100%. Definitely there has to be looked at something that is missing, is what I understand from what you are saying. Now, st- after the transition in 2025 deadline, what operation practices became non-negotiable? Because few were non-negotiable, like monitoring, measuring, and continual improvement. Your take on these pointers, sir?
So in 2026, the non-negotiable thing is data-driven governance. If you cannot show a performance dashboard for the last 3 months or 6 months, you are not ISO ready. Secondly, you cannot say that okay, I data leakage is a threat, but I will not have controls in place. So you need to have proper risk assessment done. Those risks have to be identified. Those risks have to be accepted at the highest level, and there should be a proper audit trail. You cannot say, no, I took a decision that I will not implement these controls. And as I said in my previous thing, the threat intelligence is very an important part of your continuous improvement. And secondly, you should also, a good thing is now you should also show proof that you are engaging with external vendors, special interest groups. Those are all new controls in the new 2022 standard, where in the olden days you could say, okay, I got this information from so and so, but now they will ask, do you have any membership with any organizations? Do you have contacts with the local authorities? Let's say there's a cyber attack, whom will you contact? Do you have proper controls in place? Do you know whom to contact in the government? This happens especially when you are working in the European Union. For example, GDPR, there are a lot of very strict controls for that. When there is an attack or any cyber threat, within X number of hours, you should inform the local authorities. There is also in the new NIS2 control, I believe, you also have to inform your auditors that something has happened. So you should have those documented. Now you cannot say, I do not know whom to contact, what should be the hierarchy. You cannot say. So the threat intelligence is very important. Special interest groups, and as I say, continuous improvement is the most important thing. You should always show improvement in some way the other, either in KPIs or KRIs. There has to be proper metrics which can be measured. And one good thing is nowadays a lot of these GRC tools also, they have come up with a lot of automation. Like if you enter the required data, it will come up with nice dashboards. So that is also very useful for presenting it to the board or to external people, how your ISMS is performing.
Sir, the other question that I want to understand is, what are the top three audit findings that you still see in mature organizations, and why they keep repeating.
Okay, so there are three things. So the first important thing is access control drift. So we already briefed upon it in the previous discussion, but let me talk about it again. Now, privilege access reviews are very important. Now, people usually what they do, you ask them to approve something, they will just approve it. They will not think what really happened. So one example, like I was with my friend, he works as a very senior change manager for a telecom company. So one of the days when we were on vacation, he is checking his emails, and I used to see that there were about 50 change requests he was getting on email, and he was just approving tick 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 tick. So he took about 5 minutes to approve 50 changes. I asked him, "Hey, what are you doing?" He said, "Don't worry, there's one more person who will approve it." So people, and I am asking him, "Are you really empowered to do this change?" So he's a telecom guy. He's approving physical security change. He's approving a next network control change without even looking into what really happens, and that is really very it's a very big risk actually. And as I said, organizations, they run security access reviews, but the number of privilege access accounts, they would have increased, but nobody was measuring reduction. They will just say, okay, I have reviewed these accounts, everything is fine. Nobody will really check how many privilege accounts were there. And I will give one more example. So uh, let's say an organization is trying to uh, do a file transfer. They're trying with the normal method. It does not work. Then it's important. So the guy says, okay, I have access to Amazon. Let me create an S3 bucket. He creates an S3 bucket. It's about 5 to 10 GB of data. He will say, okay, because I want nothing to stop, let me give public access. You can transfer the data. So the data is transferred. After that, everything is forgotten. He doesn't really think about it. And after 6 months, there's a cyber attack. The same S3 bucket is used to compromise. And this is what really happens. So unless you have accounts properly deleted, it becomes real mess. And that is where I say integration is also important. You have intra ID, uh, Okta, different directory services, and if you do not have proper integration, and wherever you allow exceptions to have local accounts, super admin accounts, which are not controlled, the same thing happens. So a developer might have an account, temporary account with super admin privileges on a financial system because he wants to check. He has to check something. Nothing. He will fix the problem and forgets about it. After some time, the guy leaves. Nobody realizes that this account has to be deleted, and after 6 months, the same account is used for hacking into the system. And these are common examples. And next finding which I find which is very important is ongoing supplier monitoring, which sometimes becomes very weak. Initially when you onboard a vendor, you will have this nice security questionnaires, whether you have a SOC 2 report, ISO 27000 report, whether you have controls in place, whether you have groups in place. You check everything, you onboard the vendor, then afterwards you forget. Now, let's say his SOC report is expired. In SOC, what it means, it is as on that particular date. How are the controls? Let's say he has a he's given you a SOC report which is just due for renewal. Maybe at the point of time when you onboard the vendor, the SOC report is good, but after 3 months, the SOC report is no longer valid. How do you make sure it's up to date? and that is where people really lose control. They say that, okay, anyway, I got the SOC control report from the vendor, I've uploaded into my ISMS or GRC, I'm done for the audit. But he will not realize that that SOC 2 report is having an expiry date. Nothing is perfect or nothing is permanent. Similarly, uh, if the vendor suddenly changes his LLMs, changes his geographic regions, you will not know about it. Let's say he has got a security incident. You will say, okay, that does not impact me. But where is the risk assessment for that? Whether your data is compromised or not. How do you get that assurance? And if there is a security incident, whom to contact? Typically, people will say, okay, I have this ID, support at xyz.com. Now, who is that support at xyz.com? Do you know that person? Do you have his phone number? And if there is a issue, how will you contact him? And do you think you will have the patience to call the toll free number, wait for the queue, and say, I have sent an email to support at xyz.com. I do not know who that person is. I want to talk to him. Now, that is not going to happen, right? So, yeah. The third thing which you we also talked about is on how security incidents are also handled. There should be proper guidance. Let's say you have outsourced your process to someone. How do you handle security incidents is also important. Now, you will say it is his job, the other person will say it is the other person's job. Now, both are might be right, but who is the single point of contact or the DRI? That is where it comes to actually.
I think what you are saying is three is first of three. One is the audit control that we are looking at. What is the access? Who is having what kind of access? And how is the access getting reviewed? That's the first point. Then you are looking at the logs. You are looking at the reports that are presented. Are they valid for the next 2 months, 3 months, or what? Are we re-validating those reports and reviewing whether those still exist or they are getting closed if there is an NC or something like? So that's the second pointer that you said. And the third pointer is who's taking the ownership, because everybody wants to have responsibility but nobody wants to take responsibility, is what we spoke some time back also, that these are the three things that you are saying. Then in reference to that is we should look at global transitions reality. Organizations certified to ISO IEC 27000 had to transition from ISO 27022 by 31st of October 2025, which raises expectations and operationally controlled maturity. So these are things that had to happen, but focus is still not there, is what I see. And now coming to the pointer that I want to look at is, uh, why do companies pass once uh, audit is done, or pass on once, but the struggle to sustain is still there? So any pointers or any viewpointers there, sir?
Yeah, let me reframe this very differently. Passing is very easy, but sustaining is leadership actually. The first time when you go for any SOC to ISMS, you have that josh in you saying that, okay, I have to do it. Teams, they clean up all their access, change control, they get disciplined, evidence is all centralized, exceptions are reviewed carefully, risks are identified, risk owners are identified. But once they get the certificate, they feel that everything is done and dusted. And that is where the problem is actually. And the control should become part of your business. It should not be a part of your audit project. And when you start treating it as part of your process, that is where things actually happen. Otherwise, you will always struggle.
I think what we are saying is, as you rightly said, it is more to look at passing is easy, sustaining is leadership, is what you said. And that brings a bell there, saying that You need to have the right BU guys looking at SOC 2 controls is about aligning to the trust services criteria. Sustaining is meaning making controls the BU business as usual. Call out for sustainable killers where you see there is some sustainability that gets killed. Ownership changes, mergers, tools, pros, uncontrolled expectations is what we are seeing. So with this, we have one last question that we want to see as the top. We are on top of the IT operations. How do we lean teams to run controls without burning out? That's the point that I want to close with from you, sir.
Actually, yeah, lean teams is something which is now becoming very popular. The problem is not because of the processes which are in place. The problem is because of the control failure. You know, the lean teams, unfortunately, they are expected to maintain support releases, maintain 100% uptime, respond to incidents, adopt new tools, generate audit evidence, and that's really not a discipline issue. And that is where, uh, if the controls create friction, teams really burn out. And when teams really burn out, controls actually drift.
You are saying is when you see really burnout, people tend to overlook things, and there is misconfiguration that can be done, and we need to look at security not to be done when a person is burnt out or is in that situation is what we are saying. uh, so it should be either automated or the evidence captured in some kind of a ticket flow or some access life cycles that we need to look at, so to reduce manual loads, because when we are burnt out, the manual loads are one things that which get hit, and that's where the human becomes the weaker link for us in the cybersecurity space, right? So that's the pointer.
I think the most important thing is you need to automate the low value, high volume activities, evidence capture, screenshots, access lifecycle, vulnerability ticketing. Those things should be automated. But what should not be automated is your acceptance of risk and some level of uh, giving control to someone. Those things should be done by a human person. Now, if you rely those things on automated controls, it will never work. And another thing is, if nowadays if a tool cannot be audited via API, then I say do not buy the tool. If you have the capability to see what's really happening through API, then only you go for it, because that is the future now. In the olden days, you could you ask the person to give these reports, but now with APIs, you yourself can get all the information. You don't have to rely on the other person actually.
Thank you for that, sir. Sir, with this, we are on top of the hour. I'll just do a summary for what we have discussed over the last 50 minutes. ISMS and SOC 2 don't fail at the framework level. They fail when operational ownership is unclear. That's what we spoke when we started the session, right? So evidence breaks at the
Yes.
last mile is again what we spoke about. Manual proof, tool sprawling, expectations, and disconnected workflows is what we also spoke around. In 2026, governance expectations are higher. NIST's CFS2 elevates accountability via governance is what we see. And post the transition realities, ISO 27000, IEC 27001, 2022 is now operational baseline after October 31st, 2025 deadline. So sustainability ensures improvement and growth, faster enterprise trust, fewer rework cycles, stronger resilience is what I feel. These are the few pointers that I have taken notes while we were having this discussion, sir. Any final pointers before we close the podcast today, sir?
Yes, sir. So, as I said, organizations, unless they have this operational ownership in place, DRI in place, they will not succeed. And you cannot have ownership unless you have proper controls in place. And governance is very important. And even though GRC is there, governance, risk, and compliance, governance first comes first.
Thank you for that, sir. With this, we are good to close the podcast, and thank you for the audience to join and ask some questions. I have one question because it is on top of the hour. We will respond it over the chat and come put it on the comment section. So, thank you for joining us. Thank you for audience for joining us today, and have a good day, sir.
Thank you, and thanks once again.